I came to ask about the family.
There is no family.
The wind carried the color of dust that evening, burnt orange and soft gold, trembling like old parchment in the dying sun. A wagon creaked along the ridge road, wheels cutting through silence. On the back seat sat a woman with a trunk no bigger than her grief. Her name was Evelyn Hart, and her hands were folded in her lap, though they trembled as the road fell away beneath her when the wagon stopped. She saw the ranch, a lonely sprawl of wood and wind. Fences leaning under the sky, a windmill crying as it turned. The driver tipped his hat and muttered something about good luck. Then he rode off, leaving her standing in the fading light with nowhere else to go. A man stepped out from the porch shadows. He was built like the land itself, broad, weathered, quiet. Colt Mercer. His eyes were gray as storm water and just as still. He didn't ask questions. He only looked once at her torn dress, her broken shoe, and said in a voice low as the earth, "You can stay. Works hard, but it's honest. No pity, no judgment. Just that." She nodded, clutching the trunk handle tighter. The sound of the windmill filled the silence between them, creaking like the breath of something ancient. That night, she lay on a small bed in the side room, listening to the coyotes cry far away. The world had sold her once, for being barren, they'd said. But here, in this half-broken place, no one had asked her to explain herself. Still, shame clung to her skin like dust she could not wash away. "I in town." Whispers always followed her. The merchant's wife called her a ghost. Martha Cobb, the widow who ran the store, said, "That's the one who can't have children. Sold to Mercer for a mare." The words floated around Evelyn like gnats, small and cruel, always near. She'd learned to walk past them, to keep her chin even and her voice gentle. One afternoon, while buying feed, she overheard Deputy Clay Rourke laugh under his breath. "Mercer sure knows how to pick his charity." Evelyn's throat closed, but she said nothing. She walked home through the dry wind until the ranch came into view, its silence waiting like an old friend. That night, she heard Colt's voice drift from the barn where he and a boy, little Sam, the orphan he kept around for chores, were oiling the tools. "Let the world talk," Colt said softly. "We work, they rot." She froze by the open window, her breath catching. No one had ever defended her before, not even behind her back. Later, under the spread of stars, she sat by the wash basin, dipping her hands into cool water. Her reflection wavered in the ripples. A tired woman who'd been traded like stock, but whose eyes still held a stubborn light. "If there's a reason for all this," she whispered into the night, "let it be kindness." Days folded into one another like worn pages. She learned the rhythm of the place, the hiss of the forge, the smell of coffee and leather, the weight of sun on her shoulders. Every morning, she rose before dawn to feed the chickens. Every evening, she watched Colt cross the yard with a stride that said he belonged nowhere but here. One day, he found her struggling to lift a saddle. She tried again, wincing, her pride fighting her strength. He said nothing at first, then stepped forward and took it gently from her hands. Their eyes met in the fading amber of sunset. "Strength ain't in the back," he said, voice rough but kind. "It's in the staying." The moment passed like a breath, but something had shifted, an invisible thread pulling tight between two lonely souls. From then on, she noticed the small things he did. Leaving his coat on the porch rail so she wouldn't freeze during chores. Setting her plate first at supper without a word. She began to mirror him, folding his shirts with care, leaving coffee warming by the fire before he woke. Night. She still dreamed of her past, the husband who'd sold her when the doctor said her womb was useless. She remembered the way he'd turned his ring finger bare and spat. "You're nothing I can build a future on." Those words had built the walls around her heart. Now, on this ranch of quiet and wind, those walls began to crack. One morning, Colt came pounding on the door, his voice urgent. Horse broke the line, gone North Ridge. Evelyn didn't think. She grabbed her shawl and followed him to the stable. They rode through silver fog, the air sharp with the scent of rain. The land stretched endless, mesquite, sage, the call of hawks high above. Colt rode ahead, his silhouette cutting through mist. She followed close, heart hammering. When they found the horse tangled in barbed wire, she gasped. Colt jumped down, slicing at the wire with his knife. The horse kicked, blood slick on its flank. "Easy," he muttered. A sharp snap, and the blade bit his palm. Without thinking, Evelyn was beside him. She caught his wrist, pressing her handkerchief to the wound. His blood warmed her fingers. Her breath came shallow. Their eyes locked, gray meeting brown, pain meeting gentleness. "You don't have to help," he murmured. "Neither do you," she said softly. The rain began to fall. First in whispers, then steady as heartbeats. Together, they freed the horse and led it home through the storm. By the time they reached the barn, both were soaked to the bone, laughing quietly at the absurdity of it. Colt's hair clung to his temples, and Evelyn's shawl hung heavy with rain. That he looked at her then. Really looked, as though the storm had washed something clean between them. For the first time in years, she felt seen. When night came, she sat on the porch, watching the sky pour itself out. Rainwater danced down her arms, over her face. She let it. She didn't flinch. Inside, she could hear Colt's boots pacing the wood floor, steady and sure. The house smelled of firewood and damp leather. Somewhere deep inside her chest, something like hope began to stir. Fragile, quiet, but alive. The days after the rain came soft and golden, like the land had forgiven itself. The air smelled of sage and wet soil. Grass pushed up green through places that had been dust for months. Evelyn planted lavender by the porch steps, her fingers buried in the cool earth. Colt watched from a distance, a hammer loose in his hand, pretending to fix the gate, but really studying her. How carefully she pressed each root down. How she looked at the soil as if it were capable of loving her back. He never told her she could plant it. He didn't have to. That evening, when she came inside, she found a small wooden fence built around the lavender patch. Rough, crooked, but made by his hands. She stood there for a long moment, just breathing it in.at supper. Neither mentioned it. They didn't need to. He passed her the salt. She poured him coffee, and little Sam chattered about how the foal had taken its first steps that morning. It was enough, but the world beyond their fence hadn't gone quiet. Martha Cobb's gossip had grown like wildfire. "She's trying to trap him," she told anyone who'd listen. "Poor Mercer's just too lonely to see it." The whispers carried through town, to the saloon, the church, even the post office. Deputy Clay Rourke made jokes about it in the bar, about the Barren woman playing house. Evelyn heard it all when she came in for supplies. She smiled politely, paid her coins, and left with her dignity wrapped around her like armor. The ride back was long and quiet, the ranch. She found a surprise waiting. Little Sam standing by the porch with a bunch of wildflowers clutched in his small hand. "Mr. Mercer said you like color," he said shyly, cheeks pink. Her breath caught. She looked toward Colt, who stood by the fence pretending to work. He didn't look up, but she could see the faintest curve at the corner of his mouth. She took the flowers, pressing them close to her chest. "Tell him. Thank you." For the first time in years, Evelyn laughed, a real laugh, light and startled, like a forgotten song finding its way back. That night, she mended his coat by lamplight, humming softly. The candle flickered against her face, turning the small room golden. From the doorway, Colt watched quietly. There was something about the sound of her humming that steadied the world. Outside, the lavender swayed under a full moon. Then came the storm that rolled over the valley with the sound of 1,000 drums, thunder cracking against the cliffs, rain hammering down in sheets. The horses cried from the barn. The air was thick with lightning and memory. A knock came at the door. Hard, violent. Colt moved first, his hand hovering near the rifle by the wall. He opened the door, and there stood Harlan Voss, Evelyn's former husband. His hat dripped rain, his coat stank of whiskey and bitterness. "Well," he slurred, eyes glinting, "if it ain't my little investment." Evelyn froze. Her skin went cold. "What do you want?" He laughed, a cruel, hollow sound. "Just came to see what Mercer bought for his trouble. Heard the whole town's whispering he's sleeping with a ghost." "Get off my land," Colt said evenly, but Harlan wasn't done. He reached into his coat and tossed a folded paper onto the floor. "You should know, Mercer, she ain't just barren by rumor. Doctor said she's useless. Can't carry seed, can't make family. Guess that's why she fetched such a low price." The words hit like gunfire. Evelyn's breath hitched. For years, that paper had been her curse, proof of her unworthiness. Now it lay on the floor between her and the man who'd believed it. Harlan smiled, cruel and trembling, before staggering back into the rain. You can keep her, he spat. She's good for keeping beds warm, nothing more. Colt stepped forward once, fists clenched, but stopped himself. He shut the door, locking the storm out. Then he bent, picked up the paper, studied it silently. Evelyn stood still, tears falling without sound. Colt looked at her. The firelight painted him in amber and shadow. He didn't ask for explanations. He simply tossed the letter into the flames. The paper curled, turned black, and vanished. A man who measures a woman by what she gives him, Colt said quietly, don't deserve anything. The words broke something open inside her. Her knees weakened, her shoulders shook, but for once the tears weren't from shame that he reached out, slow as dawn, and took her hand. His palm was rough, her skin trembling against his. You ain't broken, he said. You just needed soil that don't judge. The thunder outside softened into a faraway hum. Later that night, she stood by the window, watching the last of the storm fade over the hills. Colt sat by the fire, his profile calm in the flickering light. She realized then that love didn't always arrive with fireworks. It often came in silence, through hands that steadied instead of seized. Spring came, and with it, life. The lavender bloomed thick and sweet. Wildflowers dotted the hill behind the barn. Evelyn's laughter became part of the daily rhythm, woven between the creak of the windmill and the lowing of cattle. One morning, she stepped outside and froze. Something small moved by the barn door, a bundle wrapped in a faded shawl. She knelt, heart pounding. Inside was a baby, no more than a few months old, blinking up at her with wide, searching eyes. She gasped softly, lifting the child into her arms. Its skin was pale, lips dry from hunger. Whoever had left it must have done so in the night, desperate and unseen. Colt appeared behind her. His shadow fell across the porch. Someone left it. She nodded. Unable to speak, he looked at the child, then at her. The world has strange ways of healing itself, he said quietly. She pressed the baby close, tears falling freely now, not of sorrow, but of grace. Together they brought the child inside, feeding it milk warmed by the fire. Days passed, and no one came for it. Town gossip bloomed again. She can't bear her own, so she steals others. They said that Colt's answer was simple. Ain't stealing if it's saving. Evelyn began to sing to the baby in the evenings, her voice soft and cracked like an old hymn. Colt would listen from the porch, the sound of her voice spilling out into the lavender air. For the first time, the ranch felt like home, not a hiding place, but a beginning. Then one night, Clay Rourke rode up, his horse panting hard. Heard you had a visitor, he said, pulling off his hat. That man, Harlan Voss, got himself killed in a card fight in town. Left debts. Lies. No kin. Evelyn stood still, the baby asleep in her arms. The wind rustled her hair, soft and gold under the lantern light. Guess that's how the past dies. Colt murmured beside her. She looked at him, eyes steady. No, the past doesn't die. It just learns how to be forgiven. He nodded, gazed deep and quiet, like he'd been waiting his whole life to hear someone say that. They sat on the porch together as the night settled. The lavender swayed in the wind. Stars burned low and tender above them. Colt didn't reach for her, but his warmth sat close beside hers. And that was enough. The baby stirred, its tiny hand curling around Evelyn's finger. She smiled faintly, whispering, sometimes the family you're given breaks you. The one you find heals you. The camera would linger here, if this were a film. The porch bathed in moonlight, lavender trembling in the breeze, the ranch humming with life again. A woman who'd been sold as infertile, now holding the living proof that love, real love, could still grow in barren soil. And as the wind carried the scent of lavender into the night, Evelyn's voice would rise, soft and certain. Even the dry earth remembers how to bloom when kindness reigns.